Hi, it's Dennis Daly. In early 1999, I visited California wine country and did a show from the KORBEL Champagne Works. While I was there, the CEO told me that his company was making a major investment in the coming New Year's. You know, the millennium? They would be traveling the U.S. with practice sessions for New Year's Eve. I went to the kickoff city.
Well, hi again, everybody, and welcome to this week's program. We're on the road again, and that's what I like doing best. We are in one of America's busiest and most fun party cities. We are in downtown New Orleans, across from City Hall in what is called Duncan Park here. And in just a moment, the Big Easy, New Orleans, is going to be the site of the first official New Year's Eve party, 11 months in advance on this week's program. And when we talk about partying, we're talking about champagne, of course, toasting the new year, and the people at KORBEL have put together a wonderful display, the world's largest champagne bottle, a van that has a stage that rolls out, and a couple hundred people are here in New Orleans to celebrate and to practice for New Year's Eve 1999, including the mayor of New Orleans. So let's go up to the stage.
How you doing today? No, that's not good enough. I need a little bit louder. How you doing today? Very nice. Welcome to the first official KORBEL Champagne Millennium Practice Party. I'm so excited to be here. We have a couple of special things for you today, and one very special person. To christen this celebratory event, the mayor of New Orleans is here to read the official mayoral proclamation. But before that, we're going to show you the world's largest champagne bottle for the first time in New Orleans. So get ready.
Ready?
And this champagne bottle is taller than I am.
Whoa!
And now we'll hear from New Orleans Mayor Mark Morial.
And now the mayor will read the official proclamation.
Good. Thank you very much. New Orleanians, you all think you can handle this bottle of champagne? On Mardi Gras Day, right? On what day? Ladies and gentlemen, we are very, very proud that New Orleans is the first site on the KORBEL Millennium Party Tour. This very special bottle of champagne, which is the world's largest and was crafted by glassmakers over in Europe, is going to visit cities all across the nation with a destination at Times Square in New York City on December 31st, 1999 and January 1st, 2000. But we want all of you to know that since we are America's #1 party town, #1 party town, that New Orleans is the first stop on the tour. So let's put our hands together and thank KORBEL for choosing our city to be #1. Now, we have a very special proclamation that we want to present, but the purpose of KORBEL's tour is to encourage people to think and share their thoughts about the millennium, about the 21st century. So we're just proud that we're chosen to be first on this wonderful tour. And it is therefore with great pride and pleasure, by the powers vested in me, that I hereby proclaim the 26th day of January, 1999 to be Millennium Practice Party Day in the city of New Orleans. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
And we're going to do a toast.
We're going to do a toast.
We want to present you with this.
Present you with this.
Hey, can we raffle it off? Can we raffle it off?
For your engagement.
Oh, thank you. But I want to share it with all my friends.
That's right, baby.
I want to share it with all my friends. So you know what I'm gonna do? Today's your birthday. You got some ID? Yep. We'll take his word for it. ID. Checking it out. Check it out for me there.
Well, that's your credentials, man.
Madam Chairwoman with the Korbel hat on. Check it out for me. She's acting like the chair lady, so
Today is his brother's birthday.
congratulations. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm accepting this with pride and pleasure, but I'm accepting it today. We're going to raise our glass and we're going to toast Korbel, the California champagne, and the city of New Orleans, a great champagne and the world's greatest city on a beautiful day. Hear, hear!
The mayor of the city, Mark Morial, giving a big toast and opening up the party atmosphere here in New Orleans well in advance of Mardi Gras. And I asked him about the familiar feeling the city of New Orleans has. So many people have been coming up to him, not saying Mr. Mayor, but calling him by his first name.
People in New Orleans are very personable, and I think it's just a tradition. People call the elected officials they have some affection for, I think, by their first name. And then New Orleans is a big city, but it's also a tight-knit city. So people tend to know each other and be very friendly with each other.
Well, here you are. Of course, you've got some security here, but yet people are coming up to you. It almost has a small-town atmosphere in that regard.
Yeah, we do have, in a sense, a good sense of small-town atmosphere in a very good way. It's a personable city. My roots are here, so I never go to an event in town where I don't see somebody that I know or that someone in my family knows or who's connected with somebody I know, and that's what makes New Orleans special and I think very different.
I think it's a tribute to the city that Korbel picked this. I mean, we're talking about a party, a good time thing to start here.
It's great to kick it off in New Orleans and probably great to end it in New York, which I think between the two of us, we probably have great party reputation. So we're excited about the fact that we've been chosen, and I know that the people appreciate this. This is probably going to go a long way for Korbel.
One other quick thing. Mardi Gras, of course, synonymous with New Orleans, a little late for this year. But for people listening who've never been, how's the best way to make plans? Are we at a year in advance now? I mean, is it still possible to find a place this year?
Sometimes it's still possible to find places even this late. I think the best thing to do is to use a travel agent who can canvass the availability of rooms instead of calling one hotel and getting frustrated. Use a travel agency. Many people come here by car. Some come with RVs. People come by train, by bus, and also by plane. So I don't think it's ever too late. It's not too late to come this year, but if you really want to plan a gala time, plan in advance, and I would really strongly encourage using a travel agency. The other thing, you can call the New Orleans Metropolitan Convention and Visitors Bureau, and they'll provide you with information on Mardi Gras.
I had a friend who flew into Baton Rouge last year in order to get here, but it worked.
Probably made his reservations late, but Baton Rouge is about an hour away, and I know some airports that are an hour away from the downtowns of some major cities.
Yes, very much. Mayor, thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
New Orleans Mayor Mark Morial. We turn now to several people from Korbel putting together this very ambitious project to travel around the country this year. Andrew Varga is the brand's general manager for Korbel Champagne. He lives in Louisville, or Louisville, if you will. I asked him how he got connected with a company that's California-based, even though he lives in the Midwest.
Well, I actually lived in California for 4 years out at the Korbel Winery, and just Louisville's the place that I live now, and it's nice to be able to go back and forth to California. I still spend a lot of time out at the winery, and basically I learned a lot out at Korbel about how to market the brand and what the brand was all about, and I've just been fortunate to be in Louisville. That's where my family is, and it's really been a nice experience to kind of have the best of both worlds.
Do we know how far back Champagne goes as far as being that festive kind of celebrating thing?
I believe it goes all the way back to the 17th century, and it's something that people have been recognizing for so long, that champagne is a part of celebration, and Korbel Champagne has been a part of America's great celebrations for over 115 years. And obviously with the millennium coming up, this is just such a great opportunity for the premium champagne of Korbel to be able to help Americans celebrate a major milestone in their lives.
I would be remiss if I didn't ask this. There's all this scuttlebutt around about there's not going to be enough champagne, there's not going to be enough wine at the end of the year, there's going to be too much celebrating. If people really believe that, will the product keep 11 months if they want to get it now? What's the shelf life? Well, champagne is different than soft drinks, I know.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, champagnes that are made by the process known as method champenois champagne should be able to age for at least 3 years or more, so that shouldn't be an issue. With respect to all this talk and hype about the shortage, it really seems like it's a real issue right now. We prepared about really 2 years ago for the excess demand, and we have laid down an additional 3 million bottles of Korbel champagne. So we feel confident that we have enough champagne for Americans to celebrate with, and that was our goal, is to not run out. We wanted to make sure that on this special occasion, this major milestone in Americans' lives, that they could celebrate with the champagne they've been celebrating with for a long time, and that's Korbel. Basically, what you have to do is try to make sure that you look at each individual harvest and see how far you can take it. And fortunately, this year's crop was a nice crop, and if it's laying down in the bottle, say in November of last year, which is a couple of months after harvest, then you basically are down for 12, 13 months, which means that champagne would be available for consumption around November and December of next year, which is really going to be a big part of the total consumption that goes on during the year.
Andrew, you are certainly preparing for the millennium early. Starting out here the first month of the year in the party city in the U.S., New Orleans. Where all will you be between now and New Year's Eve?
It looks like we're going to be at about a total of 50 cities, and we're going to crisscross the country a couple of times. We're going to be out in San Francisco, obviously, because it's so close to our heart and Korbel Winery. We're going to be in basically every major city, like I said, crisscrossing twice, and then ending at the Times Square 2000 celebration, which is sure to be the biggest celebration in the world. It has been forever, and we're just proud to be partners with Times Square 2000. It's going to be a great show.
I met one of your young helpers named Michael, who told me that he's going to travel across the U.S. now for a year, and I thought, what a rotten job. How do you sign on to something like that?
I don't think he's having such a hard time doing it. It's really what we're doing is we're having practice parties the whole year, and Mike was brought in as a Millennium Project Director for Korbel Champagne, and really what he needs to make sure is that he gets all these practice parties executed seamlessly and flawlessly, and it's going to be a tough job, but somebody's got to do it.
So it's not just riding the bus, there's a lot of work involved.
Absolutely, and that's the thing. We want to make sure that we bring the ability to Americans for them to celebrate in an appropriate way, responsibly for the millennium, and the Toast Book is one of those ways to really have Americans talk about their major aspirations and goals for the future, and we're hoping that book becomes a part of history. And so there's a lot of different parts to this entire event that it really takes some hands-on experience, and we have the people to man that and take care of it.
Well, you know, one of the things that I think is going to be great fun for you is you start out here in New Orleans, where the mayor is a second-generation politician. He's just... you'd only hardly know he's the mayor. I mean, people are coming up talking to him. You will meet so many different kinds of mayors and so many levels of formality. You should write a book about this year.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's going to be really interesting what's going to happen across the course of the year. What we found that is just amazing, and you saw it today with Mayor Morial and the way that he spoke about the millennium and the fondness for New Orleans and the city, is that this is going to go on across the country, and people are really going to get behind it. And Korbel Champagne is just so proud to be a part of it, and it's so appropriate that Korbel Champagne is a part of it because we've been doing it for so long and helping Americans celebrate.
Well, not to sound like your PR person, but you've got such a gorgeous location on the Russian River near Guerneville, which people tend to pronounce Gurneyville, but it isn't, right. In California, north of San Francisco. I would just tell anybody, if they're on the West Coast, whether it's Korbel or any of your competitors, and you all seem to work together up there, go to California wine country. I mean, it's just one of the most marvelous places I've ever been to.
You're right. I was privileged to be able to live out there for 4 years, and Gary Heck, the president, owner, and chairman of the board of Korbel Champagne, afforded me that opportunity, and I am so thankful for that. And it's a nice slice of heaven to be out at Korbel and on the Russian River. It's just so beautiful, and wine country in general is just gorgeous, and I highly recommend it. Anybody that's going out to Northern California, if you don't stop by wine country, and more importantly, if you don't stop by America's most famous premium champagne producer, Korbel, you're really missing something special.
Andrew Varga, who is the brands manager for Korbel, even though that company is based in California, he's in the beautiful city of Louisville, Kentucky, or if you're from that area, Louisville. He is part of the nationwide tour that Korbel is doing, hauling around the world's biggest bottle of champagne, giving people an opportunity to talk about their expectations for the millennium upcoming. I asked him how people listening to this show could find out when the tour might be in their area.
About 2 weeks before we actually have the event, we're going to partner with one of the local radio stations and get the message out through the radio station. We're also going to be getting it out through flyers in and around the area where the event's going to take place. So people that live in the individual cities will be able to know well in advance that the Korbel Millennium Tour is coming, inviting people to come out and practice with us and see the world's largest champagne bottle. And it's been amazing. You look at this event here in New Orleans as an example. That's basically what we did, is through radio and then also through local flyers. And I would say we've had a turnout of about 350 people. It's been fantastic.
Well, it's nice to know that radio still works.
Absolutely it does. And it's amazing. As we went around New Orleans yesterday and went to dinner last night, people would come up to us and say, "Oh, you're with Korbel. I heard you on the radio today, and we're going to be out tomorrow to help you celebrate at the practice party." So that's good news.
You went to dinner in New Orleans, and I missed it.
Oh, I tell you what, how can you not? I mean,
are you doing lunch?
Let me tell you something. This is one of the greatest food capitals of the world. And like I said, I lived in California, which is San Francisco and wine country has phenomenal restaurants, but New Orleans is unbelievable in terms of the cuisine. And we ate at a great place last night called Nola's and really enjoyed it, and it was a lot of fun.
Well, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but if you compare the demographics of the Bay Area, San Francisco, to New Orleans, as far as people who work out and people who need to work out, they're two different worlds.
Oh, you're absolutely right, and it's very difficult to compare the two areas, and I think that's what makes them both unique, is that they both have their own flair and they both have their own distinctive qualities, and that's what makes, from my perspective on this tour, being able to come to a great city like New Orleans and then go to a great city like San Francisco or New York or Chicago. It's just outstanding to see the differences.
Any medium or small-sized towns, or mostly big cities you're going to be going to?
We actually are going to expand to more medium-sized cities. Originally, we were going to the top 25 cities in terms of population, and what we've decided to do is really go to the next 25, and as time permits, go to the next 25. The goal there is to be able to bring the Korbel Champagne Practice Party Tour to basically every American if it's close to your area, and we're trying to isolate that with geography and make sure that even if it's not coming to your city, you're close enough that if you hear it on radio and you're interested in it, you can make it out.
The radio station that helped sponsor the arrival of the Korbel Tour in New Orleans sent the word out, had a contest, and a lot of people called in. Among the winners was Ron Connor, a kind of laid-back sort of fellow, the kind of person you'd find in downtown New Orleans. And I asked him about the contest and the city of New Orleans, and he, as a lifetime resident there, has some pretty strong feelings about a city he loves very much.
Radio station 101.9, Magic Radio, had a contest, and they were picking 25 entries. And I dialed in, and I was a 10th caller. And that's what they normally do. They advertise something, and they'll say, "I'll take the 10th caller." And I was a 10th caller, and that's how I became an applicant for this contest.
Well, Don, you've lived here all your life. I'm one of those people who just gets here not often enough. Is it possible to explain to someone who's never been to New Orleans what a wonderful, fun, party, disheveled looking in some ways, but yet romantic place this is?
Yes, I think the biggest thing they can do is follow the tourist agencies and find out where to go. And once they do that, it makes it a lot quicker to really learn about New Orleans and have a really good time, because New Orleans is a party city.
The other thing, too, I was talking to the mayor for a minute. This is such a wonderful, multicultural kind of area. I would presume, not to put words in your mouth, but in your lifetime, you've seen that change a lot, as far as it being in a much more easygoing place in a way, or am I stretching this too far?
No, I think it's a very, very easygoing town. It's a city that care forgot, People come here and they really have a good time. The entertainment, the Superdome and everything. There's so many things that you can do in New Orleans year-round. All you have to do is get a weekly newspaper and look in there, and there's so many activities and festivals for someone to go to.
Don, what do you do when you're not out here partying?
I do a lot of running and do a lot of dancing.
I see.
A lot of it.
Do a lot of work?
Yeah, I do a lot of work. I'm a workaholic also, yes.
What is it like to put together a massive endeavor like this, to do the PR and book all the hotel reservations, make sure the mayors of all the towns are there and the people show up? Well, that is Mike Herring's job. He has for years been working on this massive project, and I asked him what it was like to undertake such an undertaking. And I was fascinated by the huge readout, the countdown clock, counting down the moments, the days, the hours until the new millennium. I wanted to know where to get one.
We had those made, and actually we're putting them across the country and just retail outlets and bars and restaurants, and just helps people anticipate what's coming.
I'm serious. I want to get one for the newsroom in Los Angeles.
Well, we can do that.
Well, okay, I'll keep in touch. Mike, how did all of this get started? Where was the germ of this born? And how did it develop into what has become a wonderfully complicated thing you're doing?
Actually, it was conceived basically over 5 years ago. Korbel has the official status of many celebrations, be it the official champagne of weddings, Valentine's, and New Year's. Well, from the New Year's, we were anticipating what's coming up. And when we saw the millennium on the calendar in 5 years, we said, there's something that we have an opportunity to own. And we got going at that point.
I don't want you to necessarily have to mention other brands here, but I can't think of many other American champagnes at all that have even half the tradition you guys have.
Actually, they don't. And Korbel being the premium California champagne, every consumer recognizes it. And they say, this is my friend Korbel, and I can celebrate with Korbel, and I'm comfortable with Korbel.
Let's talk about a word that I learned many years ago when I first went up to Sonoma. That's the word riddling. Can you, for the layman, explain, not for the Batman TV show, not the Riddler, but what riddling is and why it makes champagne unique?
Actually, with California champagne from Korbel, it's a methyl champenois. That's the traditional French method of making champagne. This, simply stated, the second fermentation is in the bottle, and riddling process basically is getting the yeast that's in the bottle for that second fermentation into the neck so it can be disgorged at the end of the process.
It's such a neat thing. The bottles are stored almost upside down. They're turned in a specific pattern. They were trying to explain to me, but I watched the guy do it. And of course, when you're dealing with huge numbers of bottles, and there is automated equipment to do it now, but in the old-fashioned way, it's almost like magic how quickly the technician's hands move in readjusting all these bottles.
It's an incredible thing to watch, and in fact, I kind of related to someone at a piano. They are that fluid and turning those bottles a quarter of a degree each time they need to riddle.
Mike, you're going to be going across the country visiting an awful lot of cities. You start here in New Orleans, where you've got the wonderful party atmosphere. The mayor here is just like any old Joe who walked in off the street almost. Mark Morial is so much fun. I was telling Andrew Varga that you're going to be meeting an awful lot of different kinds of mayors in an awful lot of different kinds of cities. You should write a book about this.
Oh, that would be something fun. But actually, we see a lot of the civic leaders, as we're looking at venues going across the country, wanting to give a proclamation and really get part of it and say, hey, we have our own plans, and like here, we're right here right before Mardi Gras. This is a great tie-in to their celebration that they're doing all across the country.
One final thing. There are an awful lot of people, and I've discovered them as I visited wine country, who are really, believe it or not, new to champagne, who are new to wine. I know the California wine industry has gone from, I think I read one time there were 16 vineyards in Sonoma in 1955 and 325 now or something like that. Where can a person go who's really kind of getting interested in wines and champagne to find out more? I mean, many people listening are going to be in small towns. Magazines, finding a good wine store?
Actually, I would go to your local retailer and just get to know someone who knows about wine in those stores, because let's face it, they know about wine that they've acquired to sell to their consumer, and they want their consumer to be happy with their selection because they know they'll come back. So that's the first place I would stop if I was a novice to wine.
Am I right in saying, in the true sense of the word, champagne is simply a sparkling wine? Or is that not quite correct?
Actually, champagne is just, it is a sparkling wine, but champagne is that process of the Korbel champagne with the methyl champenois, where we have a special process, the French traditional process of making champagne.
Somebody out there listening, how do you know where this project is going? Keep tuned to your local radio station?
Actually, you can visit the Korbel website, www.korbel.com. We will be listing the all major events as we tour across the country. And so that'd be probably the best place to go look where it's going to be in their market.
And for those 3 people who don't know, Korbel is spelled with a K. K-O-R-B-E-L.
That's correct.
Well, Mike, this is great fun. I want to thank you for inviting us here, and I'll check in with you as your trip progresses.
Thank you very much.
Practicing for New Year's Eve? Well, a lot of people had fun in New Orleans. I'm Dennis Daly.